In our last video, we looked at the basic structure of an essay. And in this video, we're going to look at some more complicated ways of organising ideas for an essay. So we've got 5 types of essay: the chronological, thematic, logical sequencing, compare and contrast, and finally, a thesis, antithesis, synthesis essay. So let's briefly review what the basic essay structure looks like. With all of our examples in this video, we're going to use the essay question: Melbourne is the greatest city in the world. To what extent do you agree? And here is our basic essay structure. We have an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. But there are some more sophisticated and advanced essay structures that we can use. Our first option is the chronological essay. This essay uses time as the basis to organise ideas and content. So with this essay, you work with time either from the past to the present, or you can go in reverse. You can use events from the present and move back towards the past. So here is our question: explain the ways in which Melbourne has changed over time. And here is a sample structure. Our first body paragraph looks at early British settlement, so early 1800s. You can see our next body paragraph is more recent, so it's 1890 to 1910. And the third body paragraph looks at changes in Melbourne in very recent years, the last 13 years. So it's chronological because it works in a sequence based on time. The next essay structure is probably the most commonly used essay structure amongst high school kids, and that's a thematic essay. So it's thematic because it uses the word theme, and this focuses on key themes or key ideas. So each idea that you have has its own body paragraph. And so we have an essay structure that looks like this. We can see this person will have 5 body paragraphs, and each body paragraph will have one theme or idea. So in the first body paragraph, this person will focus solely on the entertainment industry. And then in the second body paragraph, they'll focus solely on sporting venues. So one theme per paragraph. Usually they'll start with their strongest theme first and work down to their weakest theme. The third type of essay structure we can use is called a logical sequencing essay. Now these are a little more difficult. This involves setting up a criteria for sequencing or ordering your ideas. And you need to do this in your introduction. So it's in your introduction that you establish how your ideas are going to come out in the essay in some sort of order. Here are a few ways in which that might occur. You might start with simple ideas and then build towards more complex ideas, or the reverse. You might start with content that is more ancient and then move towards more modern. You might begin with specific arguments and then build towards more general arguments. Alternatively, you might use ineffective responses and move towards more effective responses. There are, of course, many other criteria that you might use to sequence your ideas, but this needs to be clearly established in your introduction. So if we use this essay question, analyse the most significant events which have affected the city of Melbourne. So for this question, I want to use this effective and ineffective sequence. I'm going to start with the most significant, or the events that have been most effective in changing Melbourne, and then work down towards some that have been less effective. And here is a sample structure. So this essay will argue that the most significant event to effectively change Melbourne was the introduction of electricity. The next most significant event was the development of air travel. And then thirdly, the most significant event was the election of the Whitlam government. So if you choose this type of essay, make sure you spend a bit of time in your introduction outlining what criteria you're using to order your body paragraphs. The next type of essay is a compare and contrast essay. And in a compare and contrast essay, you highlight similarities and differences. So in the case of this essay question, compare and contrast the cities of Melbourne and one European city to determine which is the best to live in. So this entire essay will look at similarities and differences between Melbourne and a European city. And there are several ways to do this. The first would look at a body paragraph looking at entertainment in Paris. So highlighting types of entertainment that are available in Paris. The next body paragraph would focus on the entertainment industry in Melbourne. And it's here that the similarities and differences between the two would come out. And you would need to explicitly explain and identify what those similarities were in this second body paragraph. And you can see the pattern continues. The third body paragraph will talk about the type of sport available in Paris. And here in the fourth body paragraph, when you introduce the type of sporting venues in Melbourne, it's here that you would highlight similarities and differences with Paris. An alternative way to do a compare and contrast essay would be to highlight the similarities in a paragraph. So the first paragraph isn't just about Paris, it's about both Melbourne and Paris and the similarities between those two cities in terms of entertainment, followed by the differences. Remember, even if your essay question isn't a compare and contrast question, you can still use a compare and contrast structure to order your ideas. Again, you would have to make that clear in your introduction. Our last essay structure is again a difficult one, and it's this idea of a thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So let's first understand each of these words. A thesis is a proposition or argument to be discussed. So every time you sit down to write an argumentative essay, your essay has a thesis, an argument that you're going to try to convince the reader of. Antithesis is the opposite of thesis, so the opposite view to that which you are discussing. Now, most students write essays that simply have a thesis. They usually leave out the antithesis. In this particular essay, we want to bring it back in. And finally, synthesis. So it comes from the verb to synthesize. And this involves combining different views to come to some kind of conclusion that brings the thesis and antithesis together. So what might this look like? Well, we need a question, the same one we've worked with earlier. And we're going to start this essay with two body paragraphs that are our thesis. So these are arguments that support our position. So the first one would talk about Melbourne entertainment industry being great. The second body paragraph would talk about Melbourne sporting venues being great. Of course, both of these arguments support my decision, my position. So I now need an antithesis body paragraph. And here it is. So it's in this paragraph that I'll present the opposite view. So instead of talking about Melbourne being great, I'm going to talk about the public transport system in Melbourne being a failure. So it's the opposite view to the view that my essay would like to have. So I'm recognizing the opposing views. Now, if we finish the essay here, it wouldn't be very clear. I've given my reader two different sides. So we need to bring these two together through a synthesis body paragraph, combine the two views. And so here I would have a synthesis paragraph which would argue that whilst improvements to public transport can be made, so recognise there are problems with public transport, most people can still enjoy Melbourne's entertainment and sport. So this essay structure has thesis body paragraphs, an antithesis body paragraph, and you could have multiple, but it brings them together through a synthesis body paragraph. So obviously different essays are suited to different essay questions, but next time you sit down to plan your essay, have a think about whether a different style other than a thematic style might be more useful for your purpose.